In today's episode of Christian Dementia Caregiving, we have a very special treat. I had the privilege of interviewing Susie Singer Carter for this episode 147, where we are going to talk about the documentary or docu-series that Susie is putting together. It's in the post-production phase, called No Country for Old People. It is a true story related to her experiences in her mom with her mother's Alzheimer's disease, as well as how they navigated the nursing home industry. And she is highlighting some of the things that have been brought to light related to nursing home care for our old people. So the movie or the docuseries is called No Country for Old People, and it'll be released later this year. But welcome to Christian Dementia Caregiving, where it is the podcast for Bible-believing Christians who are wanting to make their caregiving journey easier, where we are going to use your God-given talents and strengths to make it easier and give you hope as well as help in this journey so that you can create good memories and moments of joy. So without further ado, let us join my conversation with Susie Singer Carter and No Country for Old People. Well, I am very excited today with my guest, who is a little intimidating for me because it's my first Hollywood person that I'm interviewing, and I'm so excited about that. We have Susie Singer Carter here. She is a filmmaker and a actress and a producer, and she has done an awesome job of a new documentary, which we're going to talk about today. So, Susie, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the documentary.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. We had such a great conversation. My South African friend, because I've been to where you're from, so I felt very kismet to you, which is Pretoria, in case you're listening. So, which is right smack. Isn't it the capital?
It is the capital. It is the capital of South Africa. Most people do not know that.
Right, right. I like to brag about that. There's a few things I like makes me look fancy. So, yeah, I'm a filmmaker, and I started off, as an actress, but then I went into writing and developing projects for television and film, and did I started with children's programming on CBS, and I went and did a transition into feature films with the feature film Bratz, which was a live action feature film with really, really fun to do. So weird because John Voight played the principal of the high school. I was like, what? That's so bizarre.
I know, right?
Yeah, right. But it was very, very fun, and from a couple other different projects here, and got to go over everything. But just the highlights was Soul Surfer for Sony.
Mhm.
Co-wrote and then also co-produced. So that was about the awesome athlete Bethany Hamilton, who lost her arm surfing from a shark, but went on to become an incredible champion anyway. So really great story of resilience, and I was very proud of that project. Around that time, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and also around that time of Soul Surfer, I was going through a really bad divorce. So a lot of changes in my life. And I really didn't know a thing about Alzheimer's at all. And I think, like most people, I had every, stereotyped idea of what it was. And, but the fact that it was happening to one of my most favorite people in the world, my mom, I was making it my business to figure it out, because it was scary to all of us, and especially me, because my mom was very slowly changing because hers
Mhm.
was a very long journey. It was 16 years. And so I made every mistake in the book. I did everything wrong. And and then I figured out pretty much how to do things better. And now I can look back and say, towards the end, I did things very well. And so, and I learned that on the backs of many other people.
Sure. Now,
I,
you mentioned something really interesting that I really want to ask you about when you said the stereotypical idea of Alzheimer's, because I come from a professional background, so I have way too much baggage in my head to know what other people who have never been around it see as the stereotypical when you hear Alzheimer's, what that means.
right. I think, I experienced it from the family and friends. It was an instant sort of a perception that they are not a whole person.
Mhm,
They are no longer a whole person. They no longer require the kind of respect
mhm,
and attention that someone who has 100% of their cognitive abilities would. For instance, my brother would say, "Well, what's the point of calling, or what's the point of visiting, because she's not going to remember." Right? And so you think, and that was always his perception. And I just couldn't I couldn't really buy into that. Although, I watched my mom very closely to see, like, what could she remember? Parts of her was she losing, and then what parts was she still retaining?
mhm,
I do think when it first happened, and my mom was no longer this pistol, this woman who could walk into any room and own it. And suddenly she still had a lot of that, but then there was things that she did that were out of character. And if she was looking at herself, might go, what? Like, I'm embarrassed, right? Because that would not be her normal behavior. And that to me was like, in the beginning, it was like, oh, I wanted to shield her from embarrassment. Like, I would keep people from seeing her at a bad time. If she was agitated, whatever, I felt like that might be embarrassing for her. And then when I figured out, it was actually embarrassing to me, not her, because she was this was her reality. So every part of this disease was her reality. And it was, and so she just had to be there. That's where she was living.
mhm,
So I had to try to figure out, um not to not that I was being judgmental, but I didn't have the perception that people would accept her and have grace, and give her the grace, and would treat her, you know, to at the cognitive level that she was, wherever it was, that they might not have the patience. Because I saw that in doctors who lost patients, right? Who would, like, just completely disregard my mom when she was very, very vital early on, and only talk to me as if she wasn't in the room, which is so disturbing for someone who's there and going, hello, I'm here, right?
I'm still here.
Still here. Yeah. And those kinds of behaviors, I know they exasperate the disease,
Mhm,
because if you don't feel acknowledged and you don't feel that you have a purpose, or that even exist, what's your point? It's like, you start to get smaller and smaller and smaller.
mhm,
So I think I'll get back to the stereotype, is that I just thought initially, because I had only met a couple people, friends of my mom's, like friends of my mother's, their parents, who might have had it at a party.
mhm.
And the repetitive thing, like, hi, what's your name? And I'd say Susie. Oh, that's a beautiful. I had a friend. And then, 5 minutes later, what's your name?
What's
Susie.
your name?
Yeah, exactly. And, so for me, I thought it was a disease of the very old. I thought that you just sort of were very nice to them, but they really weren't totally, like, you couldn't really communicate with them. I didn't know anything about it. I just thought, be kind, but they're kind of not here.
Okay.
Learning with my mom, I realized very quickly, no, she was here and always was to the very end.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I have a follow-up question on that related to what you said about you wanted to shield your mom from being embarrassed and then recognized later on that it was really more you were shielding yourself from being embarrassed.
Mhm.
One of my biggest platforms is to truly work on changing the narrative around dementia per se, from this whole doom and gloom and woe is me tragedy narrative. What I believe and what I notice is there remains this tremendous stigma related to dementia. Do you think that it's coming from more the family in what you said, "Oh, I'm embarrassed," related to knowing that someone I love is not acting the way they always would have? Or do you feel it's coming from, like, the healthcare system in the whole, "Well, there's nothing we can do, so we're not gonna do anything," kind of narrative, or from the person themselves who may be hiding it because they're embarrassed? Have you
I
ever thought about that?
all of above, all of the above. I think I did a film halfway through my mom's progression when she lived with me for a year, called My Mom and the Girl. And I really portrayed a lot of what you're talking about, um, because my mom that year, I call it the best and worst year of my life because it was really hard because she was straddling both sides of her disease. She knew she had the disease. She was fighting it, tooth and nail. And it was really hard for her because at times she would forget she had it. And then at other times she would go, "You gotta lock me up," you know, and we dealt with everything with humor.
Uh-huh.
Mom, as sturdy as she was, she would feel so bad later when she'd think back and go, when I'd say, "Mommy, when you say that," because my daughter was only 16 at the time, and she would say, "Oh, I see you're here with your friends. I'll go. I'm not welcome." And I'd say, "Mommy, this is your granddaughter." And she'd go, "Right." And then later of course, she remembered because the disease sometimes, that's part of the disease. And oh, she would be devastated. She'd go, I can't, what is wrong with me?" And I'd tell her, "You have Alzheimer's and it's okay. Like that's part of it, Mom. It's like having a head injury. Like that's part of it. And we're going to learn to live with it. We're going to figure it out the best we can." I do think, some family members and friends, the community might not have the patience, or it's too painful for them, or it's embarrassing to them too, whatever, which is why I made the movie, because I wanted to show that even though my mom was losing a lot of her rational thinking,
Mhm.
her emotional thinking was intact and very powerful. And she connected with people, strangers all the time. And with whatever she had, whatever was her resources, she used them and learned to use them all the way to the end. So I found that fascinating, and I found that so comforting to me to know to lean into it, to use that trope, but I did lean into it. And that changed everything for me, for my daughters, who we all stay very close with my mom, for all of us, for us, of course, but we all stayed close with my mom. Whereas, I know this happens a lot with people with dementia, is that a lot of the inner circle slowly drift away. They slowly drift away, and what's really sad is I remember my mom had to move to assisted living, and one of my stepsister, who hadn't visited my mom at all when my mom's husband died, this was a couple years later, she said, "I would love to bring Georgie, my stepdad's cousin, to visit your mom." And I said, that would be hard on her because she's not going to remember that woman, because now it's been too long. Had she stayed in her life, she would have remained, even whether she knew her name or not, she would have remembered here and here. But I said, now that would just be disturbing and frustrating for her, right? Because, listen, when I can't think of a word, it's so frustrating. Right? When you can't think of something, that is so frustrating. And when it's happening all the time, it's very disturbing. And I think, I think that's the hardest part for the person with Alzheimer's or dementia, when you can't think of something and, it's got to, do you agree?
But the tongue feeling
Right.
that we've all had before. Yeah,
It
for sure.
right? And you're just like, and it's panicky. It's a little bit panicky.
Mhm.
And especially when you should know something. That's why I'm skipping a little bit around, but that's why I love, you and I talked about this model of looking at dementia from Judy Cornish,
Yeah,
from Dawn Institute. And I love the fact that she said, make it easy on them so they don't have to think about it. So every time I'd walk into my mom's room, I'd say, "Hi, mommy. It's me, Susie, your daughter. I'm here." So she didn't have to think about it. She didn't have to put two and two together. She didn't have
yep,
to do anything. And she knew. Now she knows who I am, what's my name, what's our relationship.
right, exactly.
And that
And
I love.
I love what you mentioned about, as the rational goes, the emotional remains, and that's something I work very hard with my clients on understanding. It really is that intuitive part of us that remain, and so many people tell you or believe that that person is not going to remember you. And I disagree. That person does remember you, but they remember you in not in dates, times, things that occurred, but how your relationship was,
And
how
makes,
you made them feel,
yes.
whether they're safe or not. And that is, the more I do this, the more I'm like, I truly believe and recognize them. I love Judy. Like Judy Cornish's book, Dementia with Dignity, is probably one of my favorite books on dementia. My least favorite, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this out loud, is The 36-Hour Day. I don't want anybody to ever read it. I think it's a very depressing, horrible book, and all it does is perpetuate this narrative. And I mean, I read the book after I had 20 plus years of professional experience, and I thought it was a terrible book, right? But
Right.
but Judy does a very good job of reframing it, related to that intuitive emotional experience that people have. And the longer I do this, my other big soapbox is the whole quote unquote challenging behaviors that get slapped on people, the you're agitated or this, you're that, or whatever. I'm really more and more every single year concluding that we, the people around them, actually cause those behaviors.
Yeah.
We precipitate it through ignorance,
Hmm.
related to things like, "Well, mom, I told you. You've told me that story 10 times already. What do you mean you don't remember?" Or, "But mom, we've just gone over that. We've talked about it." All of those kinds of things that
Hmm.
we say because we were not clued in at
Right.
the beginning, causes the anxiety and the fear and breaks that relationship that you have with that person, that results in later on them not trusting you, not wanting you to help them, because you've had this adversarial
Hmm. Hmm.
relationship in just figuring out what the hay is going on.
Right.
I really love that you brought out that intuitive, go for the emotions. Don't go for the reason, go for the emotions. Who cares if the person tells you 116 times what's your name?
Yeah.
My name's Susie. My name's Lizette. I'm your
Right.
daughter, right?
Exactly.
Do it over and over and over cheerfully, and they won't freak out. They
Right.
won't get anxious.
That's right. And I maintain that they will, if you are consistent,
Yep.
those are memories that don't leave, like you said. When my stepdad died and I moved my mom in with me because she was having Groundhog's Day. Where's Georgie? Mommy, he died. What? Nobody told me? I didn't go to, when was the funeral? And I'd go, "Mama, you went to the funeral, right?" And my brother, the day that he died, he goes, "Why do you tell her that he died? Just lie to her. Just say." And I said, "No, this is too important. This was her best friend."
Mhm.
And so when she came, so she had just moved in with me, and I had the memorial, the little pamphlet. And every time she'd say to me, "Where's Georgie?" And I'd say, "Mom, you know what? He passed away, but you went to the funeral and and it was beautiful. Da 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 da." It only took me a week and a half at most.
Mhm.
And the last time she asked about him, she said, "Where's Georgie?" And I said, "Where is he, Mom?" And she said, "He died." And I said, "That's right." And that was it. She never asked about him again.
Yep.
And I thought it was so important for her to get it,
Mhm.
and I think, and she knew it was important for her to get it. And also it was, it was consoling to have closure.
Right. Yeah. Now I think that for some people, that doesn't always happen.
Right.
And in that case, I always tell my clients and people that I work with, ask the person where they think they are.
Yes. Well, that's what I did, is what I said, "Mommy, where is he?"
Yeah.
Because
But she then knew, but if the person says, "Well, I think they're at work," you don't have to flat out lie. You just say to them, "You have to be right."
yeah, exactly. No, agreed with you. I mean, listen, if it didn't work, if my if my hypothesis was wrong, I would have stopped, and I
Right.
would have said, "He's at the store picking something up."
Yep.
Okay, done and done.
But you tried,
I
and some people are too afraid to try. Uh, and I also think it depends on the frequency. Like, it doesn't sound like your mom asked every, like, 5 minutes, she asked intermittently, but if somebody is asking every 5 minutes and they're reliving it, we may have to try something different, but I love your story about that because we've the people around them do not know what they can and cannot remember.
Mhm.
Because up to a certain point in this process, people can actually learn information that is highly valuable to them.
Yes,
And
yes,
that is why your mom learned that Georgie had passed away because
yes.
it was important to her to
Very
remember that.
important. 'Cause and I knew it was, because she kept saying, "Ugh, what am I?" Because he was 12 years older than her. "What am I gonna do? If he dies, when he dies, I'm gonna be he's my best friend. He's my best friend. What am I gonna do?" She was so stressing about losing him, and I knew that. I knew it was important for her to have the closure and to know that she was safe and that she was living with me,
Right.
And I just really was hoping, I mean, it was like those little miracles that happen, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
my movie is very much about intuitive and emotional, capacity. And, because it's really a lovely story about my mom meeting a stranger on the street. I won't tell you the whole story because I hope everybody will listen to it. I
Uh-huh.
will watch it because it's a short film. She meets this transgender woman on the street, 10 o'clock at night, and they have a conversation that you would, in a million years, I mean, it wrote itself because I couldn't have wrote this. And my mom, this woman, ends up crying and telling my mom, like, she has no one to love her. And my mom kicks in, mommy. Mommy
Oh.
kicks in, and my mom was 5 foot tall, and this woman was 6 foot whatever. And she's like, "Now you stop that right now. Yes, you have someone who loves you. I love you. And if anyone else doesn't, it's because they're stupid or jealous or both." And it was like, and my mom, the mama kicked in,
Mhm.
and all she saw was a beautiful woman, right? And the
She
woman
saw
said,
a person.
yeah,
Yeah.
she said, well, she goes, I'm a tranny. And my mom goes, who gives it? Who gives it us? I got a big fanny. Right? So she didn't care. Basically, so what she's saying is like, you're gorgeous. Who cares? That's
Yeah.
all I see is a gorgeous woman.
Yep, for sure.
And it was beautiful. So they both helped each other for that moment.
Oh, for sure. There was a connection,
Mhm.
a person to person connection.
Beautiful.
So you did that movie. And now you've done this documentary.
Right. We just finished a post-production on it, and so we are working on distribution now, so it's not even out yet.
I
But
know, I'm
yeah,
excited about that.
so yeah, so to transition to that conversation, so, my mom and the girl was really, I called it a joyous look at Alzheimer's
Mhm.
and dementia and caregiving, and not in that toxic, like people say, that toxic positivity, not at all. Like, I showed both sides, but I really showed that, but isn't that in everything in life has both sides. So
Absolutely.
fair enough, right? Okay, like nothing's easy. Marriage isn't easy, raising children isn't, nothing's easy. So
Getting out of bed some days isn't easy.
easy, right? So why should that be any different, right? But so 2 years ago, when COVID was, happening all over the world, and my mom was in assisted living at this point, and the last 6 months of her life was just a journey from, the underworld. It was. I never imagined in my life that people could be treated like this. My
Mhm.
mom was at a 5-star facility here in Los Angeles, very respected, been around for a very long time. It's a it's a it's very well known in our community.
Mhm.
And I was dumbfounded. I was like, "What is going on?" And my mom was literally every hallmark of neglect that could happen, my was happening to my mom. And because of COVID and the protocols, families were kept away. So a lot of things happened because of this systemic issue that we have in our country, in America and all over the world. But in America it is egregious, and it's criminal, and it's corrupt. The system is corrupt, and it's based
Mhm.
on a lot of corporate greed that's taken over the industry. And there's many reasons why it is allowed to go on politically. But but I'm also interested in the fact that it goes on under our noses, under the public, the collective
Mm,
conscious.
right. Yes.
I mean, the fact that we don't look at it, it's not even on our purview, because there's so much ageism and ableism going back to, Alzheimer's and dementia within our society, within just the public, like we were talking about before. So that ableism is still there.
Mhm.
And then what was shocking to me is that it's really prevalent in the healthcare system.
Mhm.
People with Alzheimer's and dementia are so often dismissed. They're voiceless people, and it's easy to just, write them off as being not worthy, not worthwhile. And so they become a victim to this kind of corporate greed that goes on, because they just become uh, an opportunity to bill. Or if they become too much of a burden financially, then they're really not going to be taken care of, because there's no reason to take care of them, because they're a drain on
Yeah.
the economics. So
Yeah.
and I had no idea of this. I grew up always thinking, like, well, things are as people present them. Nursing homes are empathetic, and they're caring, and they go by the rules, and we pay into this, so then when we get older we're supposed to be taken care of, and these people are professional. And I'm just naive about all of that stuff. And I had to think about it. Well, here I am, this very hands-on caregiver for my mom, and I'm completely unaware of this systemic crisis. Well, if I didn't know it, how many other people don't know it?
Mhm.
And lo and behold, most people don't.
No, most people do not. Absolutely. So, what I also find very interesting is based on our conversation, I know how active you were in her nursing home and going and seeing and advocating for her. So I want, what always scares me is what about those people who don't have a Susie?
I That's one of the first things I say in the documentary. It's like, what, here I was, and I really did not have any agency at all. I got lip service 24/7. Can my mom have a wound doctor? Yeah, we'll look into it. Oh, okay, well, it's been now like 7 weeks. What's going on?
Right.
And I'm very, or can my mom, why does my mom have a Foley catheter for 7 weeks? Why does she need that? That's dangerous. No, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's now, it's part, it's fine. Don't worry about that.
Right. Yeah.
It was just dismissal, and my mom was in pain, and I won't go into all the things that happened to her, because it was, I mean,
It was
honestly,
hard. Yeah.
sorry, it was, I mean,
It's
honestly,
hard.
it was like when I would tell my friends and family, I really felt like they're going to think I'm crazy, I'm unhinged, because there, how could all this be happening
Mhm.
at this place, at this 5-star place, right?
So I'm, related to that, this five-star place here locally in South Carolina where I live. For a very brief period of time, I was a therapy manager in a skilled nursing facility, a CCRC, a continuing care retirement community. And thankfully, I recognized I am not well suited to management. I have too much of a mouth.
Yes. Thank God.
Leadership, yes. Management, no. But I
Right.
remember walking through the facility and telling my husband it was one of those facilities in town, right? The had the name, everybody, and I walked down the hall, not supposed to have our cell phone, but I'm like, I have never, like, the most beautiful building,
Right.
beautiful aesthetics,
Right.
very expensive.
Right.
And I'm like, I have never been in as bad a nursing home in my entire life. I'm like,
Right.
I cannot believe the substandard care people were getting there. And then the flip side, I've been in the worst buildings, think Florida, cinder block painted buildings that were in a very small, tight knit community,
Uh-huh.
that the care was exceptional. But you wouldn't know it looking at the building.
Right, 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 right,
Taken care of extremely well. So there are those two
right.
absolute extremes, but
There are some, and I want thank you for bringing that up, because there are some places that have, despite the system, which is really hard to fight against, because the good facilities that want to do a good job, depending on how they're, what is their business model, if they're for profit, if they're nonprofit, if they're owned by real estate, or private equity, working against that and wanting to do the right thing is so difficult. And but yet there are places that will do it, because their community within that facility is stronger. And but I'm telling you, it's not fair to them, to those facilities that want to do a good job. Most people want to do a good job. That's the thing. Nobody goes into nursing, or, healthcare, for the most part, unless, or CNAs, unless they really want to do this. This is what they care about.
mhm,
But when you can't do your job, when you're understaffed and overworked and underpaid and not getting benefits, and you're being given, twice as much workload that any one person should ever give, be, you can't do your job. You cannot do it. And you're going to go home at night, and you're going to feel awful. You're going to have what's called moral injury.
yep,
And you are going to either try to compartmentalize, which means shut off your emotions, which is what we see often. And that's why we see people that are just going through the motions, because
absolutely,
they're trying to protect themselves, or they just leave the industry. There's
yeah,
an excess of
mm,
that.
right,
And that leaves us with people doing this job, these jobs, as a side hustle. And that's the last thing you want in elder care or in vulnerable care, is someone doing a side hustle.
yeah, for sure. I remember when you and I were talking before, before we started recording, that we talked about the fact that you could get a job in a convenience store or a Chick-fil-A or a Burger King or whatever and actually be paid more money than taking care of our most vulnerable adults.
Yep.
And why would anybody do that if you can go get a job somewhere else where you don't have to work as hard, you're not bitten or hit or other things.
It's hard work. It's heavy. If someone is immobile and you have to turn them and patience and all that stuff, it's a lot. Bathing, it's a lot. I mean, they're saints. You guys, the frontline workers are saints.
They are, absolutely. Do you feel alone and isolated and need a little bit more help and support in this journey? Sign up for our next Ask the Dementor monthly meetup, where we will come together. Less than 10 people are allowed to sign up at a time, so we can have fellowship where we can answer questions, where you can get some Christian guidance and just an awareness that you are not alone on this journey. I really want you to be able to connect with me. I want to be able to answer your specific questions. So if you're struggling, if you're tired, if you're overwhelmed, if you're stressed, if you just need a little bit of help, sign up for the next Ask the Dementor monthly meetup. The link is in the show notes below. So tell us a little bit more about the purpose behind the documentary.
Right. So, I'll just want to say briefly, my mom, so she ended up going into the hospital like 36 hours after I'd finally gotten to see her. And she was admitted with a stage 4 pressure wound. I didn't even know really what a pressure wound was, let alone how severe a stage 4 is. And, one of the many things we talk about in the documentary are these never events that the Center for Medicare and Medicaid will tell you. One of them, number one, is bed sores, because that is the hallmark of neglect. So are UTIs, and these are things that should never happen. And yet, if you talk to the administrators that are, not the good ones, they'll tell you, oh, that's normal. This is what happened. We try, but we can't avoid it. No, that is wrong. There are ways to avoid that, and they have to be avoided. And we know this for a fact. So, and those kinds of issues, bed sores they are the root of the end. They are the beginning of the end if you don't take care of them. And that's what happened to my mom. So what I want, my partner, Rick Mountcastle, who, if you haven't seen Dope Sick on Hulu, you should. It's about the two prosecutors who went after Purdue Pharma for off-marketing and OxyContin, and really getting it disseminated as a street drug, and many people dying from it, and them making billions and billions of dollars. Well, Rick Mountcastle was a former U.S. attorney who federally prosecuted them and won the case. I won't tell you all about it. Go watch.
I'm going to go watch it for sure.
Watch it. But he is an incredible human being. He also, his next case after that was Abbott Labs, who off-marketed Depakote to nursing homes, which my mom was a victim of. Depakote. That's that chemical tethering that they do often to keep people calm and like, so they don't have to do anything. They're basically sleeping.
Right.
They're zombies.
The other word for chemical tethering is a chemical restraint.
There you go. Thank you. Right. And that is what it is. And that's all, and I didn't know it until her GP told me. I thought this was 8 years before she passed. She was walking, just lively as could be. And suddenly she's immobile. She's in a wheelchair. She's incontinent and a zombie. Mm-hmm. And her GP told me that she was on this drug, Depakote, and that it was a black label drug for people with dementia and elderly, which means it causes death. It can cause death. So, so Rick had gone after Abbott Labs and also prosecuted them for $1.5 billion.
Mm.
That was what they ended up with. Still, they're in business.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just the way it goes. And then he also prosecuted nursing homes for fraud and abuse and neglect federally for 20 years. And so he was just, when I got to meet him, long story short, I hunted him down. I said, "You got to come on my podcast and talk about Depakote and all those kinds of things." And then I was going through all this problem with my mom in 2022, 2 years ago, and he was just retiring,
Hmm.
and he was, kind of a little bit famous from Dope Sick. He was being on all the big talk shows. They were interviewing him, and he was on MSNBC and CNN and da da da. And he was the first person to tell me, "This is not just your mom's facility. This is a systemic crisis." And I've seen it. I prosecuted them for 20 years, and all these one-offs that I won, there's no change. It's been that way for a very long time. And now that I've done this documentary, I can tell you, you know, that has been around for, documented for at least 60 years, and if not more.
Yeah.
People that I know that are, of age, who've been advocating forever, will say it was way before that. But, it's been going on for a very long time. And that's why, traditional advocacy hasn't helped. It really hasn't. It's been at best performative, because there's a very strong nursing home lobby who is it is one of the top three lobbyists who are very strong, which is the pharmaceutical and our NRA, right? So we've got these incredibly deep pocketed lobbies who like to keep it status quo, because that's how, everybody, all the people that are making money off of it are very comfy cozy, and they like it just as it is. And the lobbies, they've inserted themselves in our legislature, seats at the table, they make decisions on behalf of the elder community, and they're making them not for them, they're making them for the industry side.
Right. And I find it fascinating that you mentioned the top three lobbies. Two are in healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah.
No wonder our healthcare system is as broken as it is.
It's broken. And and I'm going to go back to ageism again, because elder care, people are like, well, they're going to die anyway. Well, da, 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 da. And during COVID, when everybody was isolated, the first couple months, one of our experts, Mike Wasserman, who's a geriatrician, who also was an executive CEO of one of the biggest chains here for nursing homes. He's one of the foremost speakers on reform now. I mean, he said there was, and there's articles on it too, 200,000 elders died that wouldn't have died otherwise. That's more than any disaster that we can think of. And nobody is talking about it.
I've thought about that a lot, specifically related to people in nursing homes with dementia and assisted living facilities during the period of COVID, because of the absolute fear and fear mongering that was going on.
And the isolation,
They couldn't even feed themselves. Never, 9 out of 10 times when you have that kind of level of impairment, you can't open up a package of something to get enough out of a plastic thing that you would get at a fast food store, and their food was presented to them in white styrofoam plates with these things that were closed. They couldn't see it.
They might not know it's there. They don't even know it's there.
Oh, they're not going to open it up. They're not going to open up their. So I have thought about that a lot.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Even people that didn't have Alzheimer's, who were cognitively healthy, who were just older and maybe in their 90s, and people that I knew from when visiting mom before COVID and having really lovely relationships with them, looking forward to seeing the cool group of the elders there. They they were literally the cool group. They would come and say, Susie's singing, let's go. And they'd come up and, they all hung out together. They had dinner together every night. And they all passed away during COVID from failure to thrive.
Social.
They were so lonely.
Yeah, for sure.
Heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
So your purpose for the movie is awareness?
Awareness is really awareness. And we want to create a movement, a really strong grassroots movement to really, once we educate everybody, it's like, again, I'm going to be very meta and say, once you know, when you know, like,
Right.
I want everyone to have that realization, like, okay, now it's like my name.
Angela?
Yeah, thank you. Angela says, it's like you, until you don't know, but when you know, now, I'm bastardizing it, but So now I want everyone to know. And then now we need to have this collective conscious to say we have to do better,
Mhm.
and we need to demand it as a public, because these sort of echo chambers of coalitions and advocacy groups and all these things who are really have their heart in the right place. Don't get me wrong, but we're preaching to the choir for 50 years.
Right. So when we start this grassroots movement related to nursing home and nursing home reform, what do you envision that actually looking like?
That's a good question. Right now, we're talking to so many groups that are, truly on the same page as we are and have been, and all from all different parts of this system.
Correct.
Because I think that we need to all be together, because it's really, at the end of the day, it's just it's that upper tier that's puppeteering everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where our focus needs to be, and then policy can fall into place after that. But that we need to expose that upper tier, because that is really what is controlling everything. So to me, it looks like the Me Too movement. To me, it looks like, Black Lives Matter, the LGBTQ. It really, what we need to take it to the streets, and virtually too, because a lot of caregivers can't get to the streets. So we need to keep that in mind and be mindful of that. But we need to make a lot of noise. We need to be very disruptive in a very good, nice way, but we need to be I'm listening to Anthony Fauci's book right now, and it's like, he really was, he was the man that brought the not the cure, but the drugs that keep people alive with AIDS, and and talk about stigma, being, and not getting the kind of money they needed. Well, this man he's a saint. And, and the advocates that he worked with, he had strong relationships with these really strong advocates who, they worked hand in hand, and they went to the streets. They had to go to the streets, because you have to make a lot of noise. You have to let the politicians who are being paid for by lobbies, their campaigns are being funded by lobbyists. The public needs to go, we know what's going on. We're your constituents. So stop it. Yeah. Let's get, let's do this. Let's make real change. So, I saw a post on LinkedIn this last week, with this from an advocacy group that has a lot of college students, and they were talking, and the head of it said, I just want to bring it to the attention. I think it's very telling that during the debates, that caregiving wasn't brought up once. Well, I think Joe Biden started to, and I won't get into all that, but let's not forget that he started the Build Back Better plan, right? And that he's had a lot of attention on caregiving, but and we put this in the documentary. We talk a lot about this. We show videos of this, where Mark Parkinson, who's the head of the lobby, will say, "Yeah, Build Back Better. It sounds great, but we don't have the money." Well, as billions of dollars are being siphoned out of, the money that's coming in from Medicare and Medicaid, right? And it's not going and it's not staying in the facilities. It's being vacuumed out and tunneled into the pockets of these very wealthy people. And so to say that the nursing homes are underfunded is just a blatant lie.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, there's a lot of money in nursing homes. I mean, bottom line, I don't know what your mom's nursing home cost, but here in South Carolina, just a run of the mill, not the best, is anywhere between six and $10,000 a month.
Right. And in LA and and more,
Much more than that.
way more. And then like my mom ended up on Medicaid because once you have a long disease that lasts for 16 years, you're going to run out of your money. So you're going to end up on Medicaid. And that's when the problems really start because now you're at the mercy. And when they say that Medicaid doesn't pay enough, yes, it does pay enough. And Medicare kicks in for the health issues because Medicaid just pays for your living expenses, right? So there is plenty of money. It's $90,000 a year minimum.
Yeah.
That's a plenty for somebody to live and have some help anywhere. Don't you
Well,
agree?
trust me, I could take that $90,000 and take care of somebody very well at home.
Right? And that's not even talking about the Medicare that kicks in for
Yeah,
the medical expenses. So
exactly.
when they say that, oh, well, if we staffed up, we can't because we still don't have the money, we'll go bankrupt. And what'll happen to these people and the scare tactics that the lobby will feed the public is that, well, what are we going to do with these people if we have to close this facility? You don't have to close that facility. You have to stop funneling money out of there into your fancy homes and your private jets and on and on and on.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
that's what's going on. And that's not, and it sounds like, a bad movie. It sounds like a bad B movie. It's absolutely what's going on.
Right. No, trust me, I absolutely have not a single doubt of it. I mean, you and I spoke earlier on about my very first experience as a therapist in the United States, but I have multiple stories. And this was even in I'm not going to talk about that particular story, but another one that, as we were talking, that came up today was it was a good nursing home. It is a good nursing home. I worked there for a long period of time. It's not one of these big corporate ones that are just the people really do care, but the medical staff that was coming in, so you'll have your facility staff that do the day-to-day, the administrators, the nurses, etc. But you always have your medical staff coming in and doing the treatment. So there's a medical director and he had a physician's assistant. And I was working with a woman who had definitely some measure of cognitive impairment. This is, 15 years ago. I don't remember her details anymore, but she had fallen overnight, which happens
Right.
frequently, and everybody is always concerned about the hip. Fall, you always get a hip X-ray, make sure you didn't break your hip. And I had been working with her for weeks, so I really knew her well.
Mhm.
And her behavior had changed. And I'm like, something's wrong, and I watched her for a couple of days and I would tell the nurse, there's something wrong, she's not the same. And they're like, well, we did a hip x-ray, she's fine, she's fine, she's fine. Finally, one day I walked down to the nurse's station and the physician's assistant was there and the medical director was sitting right next to him. And I am not a keep your mouth shut type of person,
I
never have been.
I love it.
And I walk up and I'm like, hey, something is really wrong with her. I'm like, I'm concerned about her wrist. She fell. The hip x-rays were fine, but she is not using the hand. It just built the whole picture. And the physician's assistant, I kid you not, I'm standing right in front of the nurse's station. And I'm not a small human. I'm a big girl. I'm 5'7", and I outweigh him, is all I'm gonna say. And I'm standing there, and he turns and looks at the doctor, and he's like, "Well, she just thinks she knows everything," like, legitimately in front of me. And I just kinda stood there for a second, and I said to him, I'm like, "Well, my X-ray vision doesn't work that well."
Okay, good on you.
And he's like, "No, no, no." They took a wrist X-ray. She had broken her wrist,
Yep,
but it took me not backing down,
right,
um,
right.
to get that X-ray for a person who couldn't speak for themselves anymore.
Oh my god, such a great story because I interviewed so many caregivers with similar stories like that that's in the documentary. One woman had, literally 2 breaks in her spine, and she kept saying, "My mother, please." They're like, "No, no, she's just agitated, and she's just, we're just gonna give her some, whatever, oxycodone or whatever the case, all." And they
Medicine. Just
medicine. And
give her meds.
finally she went to, like, another, physician who wasn't part of that nursing home system and said, "Can I just pay for a MRI?" And, 2 breaks in her spine. I mean, that's called torture, folks.
Right,
That's torture. That is You wouldn't do that to an animal. You
right.
wouldn't I mean, it's so unconscionable, it's
Yeah,
just egregious. It's awful. It's unthinkable. It's unthinkable.
yeah, for
I went
sure.
to my mom with the stage 4 and got keep te and kept telling me after she gets out of the hospital, like, "Well, she's gonna succumb to it, so we'll just keep her medicated." I'm like, "What are you talking about? She's gonna" "Yeah, you would too. You would too if we don't take care of it.
Right.
What's wrong with you?
Totally. Yeah,
Are you"
absolutely.
and they don't want to, I find out now they don't want to call a wound doctor because that's gonna alert, CMS and Medicare that she has a wound. They don't wanna talk about that because that's gonna bring their star rating down.
Right, for
And
sure.
so they don't wanna talk about that. They don't wanna, and the first thing they said to me when I called them when she was admitted into the hospital was, I said, "How come you didn't tell me my mom?" Because, stage 4 wounds don't start in 5
No,
minutes,
no,
okay?
they're there for a while.
Yeah, they're there for a while. Why wouldn't you tell me that? If she's being taken care of and you saw that, why don't you call me as her, conservator person? And their answer was, "It didn't happen here."
Of course it did,
Right, but that's what they told me. So apparently it
but it
happened
wasn't
before, but even
documented there.
no, they said it wasn't, but I found that it was, the
Mm.
month before. So it was there for a good month before.
It just makes me so mad. I'm so sorry your poor mom went through that.
Thank you. Nobody deserves it. That is so painful. She ended up dying from it going all the way to her tailbone.
Mhm.
And that is, you don't, and it is so, unfortunately, so much of the standard of care, you know, the good ones that you're talking about are the outliers. And
Right,
that's the sad part. And so that's why, it's a matter of humanity at this point, because we're talking about people are getting warehoused for money.
for sure, absolutely. So
In
so,
America, folks, in America.
oh, for sure. Absolutely true. I mean, it's true. I've worked with people all over the country, all over the world that I've helped online, that they've taken care of somebody at home all the way through this process where they've never gotten any type of wound, any type of, you know,
Right?
those kinds of things. You can take care of a person with dementia without them developing a bed sore
Or even a UTI. I've
or a
spoken to
UTI.
many
Yeah,
caregivers who have had the good fortune to taking care of their loved one at home, which you can only do if it's not too high of acuity, right? And because otherwise Medicaid doesn't pay for Medicare doesn't pay for home care, right? So to the extent that you need it. So that it
right.
has to be within a facility. So, but I can't think of one person that I've interviewed on my podcast because it's all about Alzheimer's that has person at home that didn't say, "Well, they didn't get a UTI with me. They
Right.
just didn't.
They didn't.
They didn't
Yeah,
get one."
for sure. So, how do people eventually get to watch the movie.
Yeah. So
I
right,
know I'm gonna get to watch the movie later this month. Actually, I
well, you're going to
actually
see a part of it. You're going to see a sizzle. What's called a
part of
sizzle.
it. Oh,
Yeah.
that's even better. So this episode airs on the 22nd of July, and I believe your thing is on the 23rd. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm glad you're coming. Yeah. What you're going to see is a sizzle, what we call a sizzle. And a sizzle is sort of like, it's what a very elongated trailer. So it's going to give you a lot of highlights of what this long, it's going to, this is going to be a 3-hour project. So it's going to be in parts. So really a docu-series broken, so it'll be broken into either 2 parts or 3 parts, but very comprehensive and not boring. I trust me when I say it's not boring.
well, it can't be boring because you're not boring.
Oh, thank you. But I mean, it's really is going to open your eyes. You're going to be like, whoa, whoa, what? Like you are going to go, this can't be happening in America. And I'm here to tell you it is.
Oh, for
So
sure.
so we are right now shopping this with, you know, streamers and distributors as we speak. And our goal is to get this out in full on available to everybody before the end of the year. This is a big project. I've worked on it with my team for the past 2 years straight since my mom passed. And I'm just saying that most documentaries like of this size can take anywhere from 5 to 10 years even. So we've worked so hard because our sense of urgency to get this out, we're sick of it. We're sick. And Rick, Montcastle, basically he's really sick of it because he's seen it so much and no change. And now that he's not part of the government anymore, he can
Be a
laugh.
little more open.
Yes, he can be so honest. And he is very honest and very, very authentic about, his perspective, which is incredibly comes from a very experienced person, someone who has been in the trenches, someone who knows both sides, knows the political side as well as the public side, and can speak extremely well on that. And everyone was vetted thoroughly because we're so lucky to have a ex-federal prosecutor on the team. So with a heart like this big, I marvel at him. Every time I go, I can't believe you must have been tough as hell, but I don't see it. I just see this really lovely heart, you
For
know?
sure.
So we got a great team. We really just want to educate and reform and change, make real change so people don't have to go through what you saw people go through, a broken wrist that goes unnoticed or ignored, rather.
Or a stage 4 wound that
Stage 4 wound, or
closed in the hospital in 2 days, right?
oh, not even 2 days, on the way over.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
On the way no, honest to God, on the way over, they called me when she was admitted. It hadn't been more than an hour and said, by the way, because they didn't want responsibility for it, the hospital.
No, for sure. No, the hospital documents it very well.
They were like, we want you to know that your mom came in with a stage 4 pressure wound. And I said, what?
What?
And so then I called the facility and they said, oh, I don't know. It didn't happen here. So it happened in the 20-minute ride.
We're not stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Susie, if people wanted to listen more or get to know you a little bit better, where do they go?
Yeah. Okay. There's 2 places. So I'm on social media everywhere. Susie Singer Carter. I'm sure it'll be in your notes. And, but also you can go to nocountryforoldpeople.com and there's everything you can look at. We've got short trailers, a minute and a half, medium-sized trailers. You can watch this sizzle that, Lizette is telling you about. And you can stay in contact with us. You can join our movement. There's a link there if you want to be a part of it, which I highly, recommend. I think it's really important. We are still raising money for the final, promotion and all the marketing that goes into it. So, and it's all nonprofit. We have partnered up with the National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care, which has been around since 1975. So that tells you how long they've been trying to get quality care. And so they've given us a 501c3 status. So anything you donate which you can find the link either on their website or on No Country for Old People, is tax deductible and going to a very good cause. And and also I'm Go Girl Media. That's my company. It's gogirlmedia.com. You can find me there. And yeah, anybody have stories, please get in contact. Go to No Country for Old People. Tell me you have a story, because we're collecting stories too. And I want to, have this so that people can't say, well, these are the outliers. These are the one-offs. No,
these
no,
are not the one-offs. Not at all.
no. And so I just say to your listeners, if this has happened to you, my heart goes out to you. We have to change this, come be a part of this movement, and come, because it's going to take 1,000 villages.
Right.
And yeah, and I need your help.
I want to say one more thing, just to people who may have no other alternative to long-term care placement. If you do have somebody in a long-term care facility, your job is their advocate. That is your job. And you cannot just
assume that they're going to be
that they are well taken care of. A couple of good strategies that I always told my patients: do not ever show up at the same time every day.
Perfect. I love it. You're so right. She's so right. She is. Yeah.
If I promise you, they know when you're going to show up.
Oh, yeah.
Come lunch every single day. Guess what? Mama's going to be really well taken care of at lunch every single day.
She'll have blush on, her hair will be brushed. Oh, yeah.
You have to come. You can have no pattern.
Zero.
You have no system. You have to be random.
Yep. I agree with you.
And you just need to be the squeaky wheel, and you
have to be. And it doesn't feel good, I'll tell you. Like, I don't like being the squeaky wheel, but because it doesn't feel good. You will become the enemy there. And it's so unfair that you do, because all you're doing is advocating for someone that you love, and you're making their life harder. Not your loved one, but the staff.
Right, for sure.
And they resent it, and I get it, but that's your loved one. So that's why they're in business. So,
and you're paying money for them to be taken care of. But the reality of the matter is, you do have to be the squeaky wheel.
100%.
Yeah.
And in hospitals too. Never see anybody in a hospital alone, ever. No.
No, I agree.
Right?
Yep, absolutely. Well, Susie, thank you so much for being here. This was fun.
Oh, good. I enjoyed talking to you so much. And I really thank you for this platform and for giving me an opportunity to share what we're doing. And I really, really appreciate you.
My heart absolutely goes out to anybody who is in that particular situation. Yeah.
You don't want to get there without the, don't want to happen what happened to me. I'm telling you, it was a horrible, horrible experience. So let's nip this in the bud. Let's get these greedy people out of there, and let's get back to some, dignity and respect and, humanity.
And taking care of the staff.
And the staff. Oh, again, like I said, we've already gone, but for sure, the staff doesn't deserve this either. The staff deserves respect.
Absolutely.
And to do what their job is.
Awesome.
And to be paid for it.
Oh, for sure. And be paid a wage that they can support themselves on.
Right.
For
Amen.
sure.
Amen. Thank you so much.
This is right up my alley. So, Susie, thank you so very, very much. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to watch the Sizzler.
Sizzle.
And then the movie.
Yeah. You got it. I'm excited. All right. I'll see you at the screening.
Yes, I'll be there.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.